pelvis. Here we go. Nerve-wracking, nerve-wracking, nerve-wracking. This should work. So here we go. Let's get started straight away. And we're going to talk about muscle pairs initially, and you guys are going to know I'm going to talk about prime movers and antagonists and this kind of stuff. And we're going to talk about antagonistic movement, but also I just want to address 2 points with you. First of all, I want to know how muscles and the skeleton work together. So we're looking at kind of muscles plus the skeleton, or the muscular system plus the skeletal system, skeleton. And I really want to look here also at the notion of the types of contractions. Now, bear in mind that later on in this session, we're going to do a really big section on the analysis of basic movement patterns. We'll come back to that. Now, muscle pairs, first of all, remind yourself, in any muscular contraction, there must be at least two muscles in operation. They are the prime mover, and this is the muscle that controls the movement, and we also have an antagonist, okay? And this is the muscle that allows the movement, all right? I'm going to give you some examples, but make sure that you understand that both of those are in the mix, okay? Now, you can also, of course, say agonist for the prime mover. That's absolutely fine. So let's take our press up, and I'm going to imagine that this guy here is on his way up. Normally, we'd have a sort of a two-phase movement here, but remind yourself, this A muscle here, we have a tricep, and this B muscle here, we have a bicep. So nice and similar in their sort of names, but notice they're working together. Our tricep, maybe sort of draw it in here, our tricep, what it's going to do here is in this particular moment of time, is kind of long and lengthened. And as its origin is up here and its insertion is up just here. It's a terrible drawing, but you get the idea. But what's going to happen is as this person moves upwards, we're going to get elbow extension, and the prime mover is going to be the tricep. That means that the bicep is going to be the antagonist, and that is going to relax to allow this movement to happen. It's really important that we understand that yes, this is contracting and shortening, and yes, this is simply relaxing and allowing. But notice the opposite alternative to relaxing and allowing. If this muscle, the bicep, kind of is sort of contracted here, at the same time, this would remain completely stationary. Okay, if we had an equal force, actually it's a torque, but if we had an equal amount of force acting, then this movement would remain stationary, wouldn't move. Now let's have a look at another example. This is one that people sometimes get a bit confused over. The A here is what we refer to as the hip flexors. Now, not surprisingly, they are flexing the hip in most cases, right? That's what they do. Flexion, remember, of the hip is when the hip goes in front of the body like this. And the B, this here is the gluteals, okay? Remember, these are collective terms. These are collective terms, but here we're talking about the gluteus maximus, the butt cheek, for want of a better phrase. Now notice what the gluteals do. They extend the leg. They put the leg backward. Notice at the hip. We are not interested in the knee here. We're talking about the hip. Okay, so back behind the body, extension. In front of the body, flexion. So flexors and gluteals. I mean, you can call gluteals hip extensors if you want to. I'm just trying to think whether that would get you a mark. I mean, use the term gluteals, that's correct, but it's worth just bearing in mind. Let's take things a bit further. I'll come back to our movement examples. Here, the back of the upper thigh, of course, we've got our hamstring group. I'm going to refer to them as our hamstrings. There are 3 of them in there, by the way. Won't bother naming them here. And of course, the muscle on the front are the quadriceps. So let's imagine, just for a second, remember, I want to come back to movement analysis later on. Imagine this person is on the way up. How is this going to work? Well, the muscle that extends the knee, remember, this is currently flexed. If it became extended here, the muscle that does that is the quadricep group here on the front of the thigh. That effectively would shorten, and it would push him upwards. So this would be the prime mover on the way up. The hamstrings, what they would be, is they would be the antagonist. They would relax to allow the movement to occur. And again, finally, looking at one that people will often forget about, this A is the gastrocnemius on the back of the lower leg. No problem with that. I'm sure you guys are all super confident. But this one on here is what we call the TA, or specifically the tibialis anterior, And this is a muscle that people frequently confuse and get wrong. We're going to talk about it quite a bit when we come back to movement analysis in a few moments' time. But gastrocnemius, first of all, this muscle on the back of the calf, it's not the only one there, by the way. It inserts all the way down here onto the heel. And when, for example, this person is pushing up, just as we got over here, it's actually contracting and contracting upwards like this. So what does it do? It pulls on the heel, which kind of points the toes downwards like this. We can call that plantar flexion, of course, right? So that's happening. So that makes the gastrocnemius the prime mover. It's contracting, in this case shortening, under tension, and of course it's creating the movement. But notice again, for that contraction to be effective, this tibialis anterior has to be the antagonist. What does it do? It relaxes. It allows, it releases the gastrocnemius to perform its prime mover agonist operation, whereas the antagonist will allow that to happen. If it contracted, we stay where we are. Let's take things a touch further before we look at anything different. I've mentioned some of these terms already. Let's make sure we're really happy with them. We've got different types of contractions. Can I just sort of summarize first of all